All right, so let's get rid of that one.
Yeah, get rid of your 1-1s.
All right, so now we're going to add Spanish.
Okay.
So we'll come and grab the already loaded or translated, somewhat translated. They're probably not correct to a certain degree.
So there's a disclaimer on these translations.
Yes.
All right.
I took some Spanish in high school and college, but I don't speak fluently.
Well, it's not like, Pluralsight has any Spanish-speaking people at all, right? So they won't know.
Right.
Actually, they'll all know.
Oh, really? Should we?
The pressure's on now.
All right. So now we have the Spanish one.
Okay.
And what we can...
Let's look at these overs, make sure you spelled them all right. I'm just teasing you. All right, so we got Spanish, language. I've noticed too, like even the languages, so I'm assuming lines 56, 7, 8, 9 right there, you're going to have some kind of a list somewhere to be able to let people change the language later.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what that's for.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Who's Juan Padre?
I don't know.
Is that me?
That's you. So now that we have the Spanish translation set up,
okay,
we'll basically do the same thing that we did for English, but now we'll key it as ES for Spanish, and then pass in that JSON object.
Okay.
Spanish.
So basically we've created the translations, and we have to register them with the translate provider.
Correct. So now this isn't really going to do anything. It's still going to go English.
Because we haven't told it to use Spanish.
Yep. And the way we do that is we just pass in the Spanish key as the preferred language.
Okay.
We come back.
Cargando?
Cargando.
All right.
We can see the date has translated. John is logged in. People, everything translated.
Even the little toasty messages.
Yes.
Sweet. So if there wasn't a translation, can we show what would happen, for example? So like, just take one of these guys here, maybe the date.
Sure.
And just change the key or delete the key in Spanish on something.
Conference date. So we'll change it to 1.
Okay. So when we do that, what happens then?
Shows the translation key.
Gotcha. So that'd be a great way to find out. And it's actually, that's why I like the namespacing of it, or even using all uppercase.
Yep.
It becomes more glaringly obvious if you have a wrong key in there.
Yeah.
And I imagine you could write unit tests against this too.
Yep.
So you could write a test that goes in there and says, okay, change the translation key, not key, what was the name of that?
ID.
ID. And then show me what the values are, and you could do a test to say, should it be this?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Let's fix that.
Fix that. And it's working.
Nice. So now we have 2 different languages, but we have no way to switch them other than tell our users to go into our code and change the code.
Correct.
All right. That's probably not a good idea.
No.
Okay.
So what we can do is actually in a recent version of Angular Translate, there's a way that you can have it figure out based on the browser and the region that the browser picks up for the user,
Okay.
the preferred language. So in there, again, it's on the translate provider, and I believe it's determine preferred language, if I'm remembering correctly. And that will return back the
That's a
preferred
function that it gives you?
Yes. What that's really doing under wraps is it's using the various browser abilities, such as like the navigator, language, right? Mm-hmm. That's built into the browser through.
Right, I just Googled it.
Determine
It's
preferred
translate provider dot determine preferred language, and that's a function.
Yes. So that's it. Under wraps, it's using the APIs of the HTML5 and the browser to determine what the preferred language is in that for that user.
Okay, because the browser has some clue of this because of where you're browsing from.
Yes.
Okay. Is this like a geolocation or anything like that, where it has to ask the user to do that, or is it just automatically do it?
It may ask the user depending on which one it falls back to.
Okay.
But what I've seen is it doesn't prompt up for me when we use this.
Gotcha.
So what that'll do is it's going to return. Let's actually just do a console log of this so we can see what that's actually returning back. All right.
All right. So we got it back an object.
Does not look right.
That's not what I would expect.
No.
Let's do a debug breakpoint and see what's happened. Just go into your
Sources.
Command P.
Command P?
Yep, Command P.
That works there too?
It works there too, man. Command P is everywhere. When you go home, you're in the fridge, and you want to get some milk, Command P.
Milk. So we want breakpoint.
Oh, breakpoint, where is that? 81?
Yeah,
awesome.
line 81.
All right, let's just refresh, and it should hit it, right?
Yep.
All right, and let's go ahead and run that line of code into the console. So just copy translate provider preferred language function. Yeah, and just hit escape. Okay, paste. Boom. Oh, so that was the object.
Yeah, but it's supposed to return the value.
So it gives back a whole object. Is it like give you an array of values or?
No.
Interesting.
Let's take a look real quick at.
So I'm going to go check out that one because that's interesting. I haven't seen that guy before.
Okay. I'll let that run through. Let's clear that. Come back to the code.
It looks like here, I'm looking at their documentation for it. You do the translate provider and then you just tell it, get the preferred language, and you don't actually return anything. It just actually figures it out and adds it into Angular Translate.
Yep.
Okay.
So in that case, then we don't need to use this, on line 82 here,
Right.
translate provider preferred language,
And we don't need the console.
and we don't need the console.
Because so yeah, the return value isn't the language, it's actually just doing the work for you.
Yeah.
It's actually confusing. You'd think that the function would get it for you.
Correct, yeah.
Oh, that's probably why it's not called get preferred language. It's determined because it's getting it and setting it and
Correct,
doing
yeah.
it on its own.
I was mixing it up with some work that I was doing previously on it, that's why.
Gotcha.
So things like using the navigator.language, which we can console log that. And I actually want to show this because if we're going to use that as the key for the language tables, it needs to match the keys that we set up our language tables for, right? So navigator.language, actually, it is. So we'll go back to here. We need to refresh this.
And Navigator is one of those objects that's just available to you there in the browser.
So we can see it's logging en-us.
Okay.
And that doesn't match our key
No, it does not.
to the translation tables. So what we could do is we can change our translation keys to match that.
Okay. What's the proper way to do that? Is it to have the keys match? Is the proper way to have our keys be en, or is it proper to be en-us?
It's preference, I think. Whatever is, as long as it's consistent, I'd say,
Okay.
is the way to go.
And the second part, which one of them is the language, one of them is the locale? Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
So if we do that, that should allow it to...
I found all of them except for conference date. And actually, I didn't find any of
I
them.
didn't find any of them.
So let's check that out.
Why did it do that?
So down here, you did translation of en-us. We did a determine preferred language, and it printed out as en-us, correct?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't know who you are. So then we got es. So if we go get the determined language, show that code again, or show it running.
Sure.
So we run him. We've got the code. Do that. Refresh. We've got Navigator language. Hover over the language real quick. Just make sure we got the right one.
En-us.
Okay. And then you said en-us is English, and that's the one above.
So this should set to that, but for some reason it's not.
So determine preferred language. Is that all you have to do is set determine preferred language? You don't have to do anything else?
I'm going to go back to...
Yeah, I'm trying to look up my code example for that too. So we do determine preferred language in the translate provider. And I don't know, is that just en or is it en-us? So what are we trying to figure out? Help me walk through this problem.
So what's happening is we're trying to tell it to automatically figure out what the preferred language is, but I think we're actually missing something. It's not just adding this determine preferred language.
Okay, so the determine preferred language, I can't say that word. Figure out what the language is.
Yes.
That function is trying to figure it out, and it got our en-us, but somehow it's not grabbing our English.
Yeah, so it's not mapping back to what our key is.
Okay,
So
let's
what
check
we
that
need
code out.
Sure.
Show me where did we go wrong?
So we can't just change it like this. Our key was like this, en.
Okay, and you added the -us?
Yes, I added
Oh, you were
that
trying to
dash.
match it
I
directly.
was trying to match it, but what happens is we need to have a mapping of what comes back from the browser as the determined preferred language, which in this case is en-us, and map that to our language keys that we have.
Okay. So the EN-US, by the way, I think it's a locale. I think it's actually the language and then the country, not the locale.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we'll do to do that mapping is use the translate provider and then register available. These are always nice and long.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this is where IntelliSense would be nice. TypeScript, man.
Yeah.
If only we had a language that we could use types with.
Yeah. So we use this function, we pass in the array of keys that we have already defined. So in this case, EN, but I'll leave ES out for now.
Okay.
Then comma, and then the object mappings. So in this case, we're going to map, we're going to map EN-US, not like that, to EN.
All right, so I want to make sure I got my head around this. On line 79, you said, here's my translations for EN. On line 84, you said, go figure it out. It figures out it's EN-US. They don't map, so then the translation, registration, available languages keys, you give it the key name first, and that's going to map to the first value in the array there, the EN-US to EN?
No, so this first parameter is telling you what are the language keys that you have that you want to provide a mapping for.
So that's got to be one of the keys up top.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, this object, you can use those keys that you define that you want to have a mapping for as part of this. So if we wanted to, we could do something like ES, US,
For
maps
Spanish,
to
US.
ES, right? And then we would just need to make sure we also include that in here as well.
All right, so these mappings over here on the right, on line, the far right-hand side of line 81, those have to be values that are on the right-hand side of 82 and 3?
Correct.
Okay, so that's how the mapping works.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So now when determined preferred language resolves and it comes back with EN-US, Angular Translate will know, okay, I need to use the EN translation table.
Okay, and it's, again, the determined preferred language is looking in the browser to figure out what is your...
Correct.
Where are you? What are you doing? Okay.
So let's go double check that.
Let's see if this works.
Refresh this page. Let's take out the ES for now.
Okay, we got the ES going.
Just do EN.
Right, MVP, man. Minimal viable product. We have an error. Hit the console. Probably a typo somewhere. Translate provider, register available languages keys.
It's
I
not
bet you it's
languages.
language keys.
There we go.
All right, so the ES part was probably okay.
Yes. In fact, we can test it out.
Sure.
So add ES again.
So this way we can translate Spanish when it's ready, if we happen to be in Spain. So let's pick up this video. We'll go to Spain. So it's ES, US. So it's Spanish in the United States.
Yeah.
It's actually in the US. Cool.
And we can see it's still working.
Right. We just happen to not be in Spanish right now. Cool.
Sure.